She was rejected by her fated mate at 16 for being defective, but the moon goddess revealed she is. Lyra stood at the edge of the grand hall, her hands trembling. The sunlight streamed through the tall, stained-glass windows, casting patterns of gold and crimson across the marble floor. Today was the day of the rite of alignment, a sacred ceremony where the fates of young ones were tested and the bonds of destiny revealed. In their kingdom, it was said that the moon goddess herself watched these moments, whispering secrets to those brave enough to listen. Lyra was only 16, small and fragile in appearance, but her heart carried a quiet fire. She had dreamed of this day for years, imagining the soft light of the moon wrapping her in a protective glow, revealing her as worthy, her fated mate finally seeing her as he was meant to. Yet as she stepped forward, the heavy eyes of the royal court fixed upon her, and her courage faltered. Prince Kalen stood at the center of the hall, the heir to the throne, the boy chosen by the moon goddess herself for another. His dark hair framed a pale face that seemed carved from stone, his eyes sharp and piercing like the winter sky. Lyra's stomach twisted. She had known Kalen for as long as she could remember. They had laughed together in the gardens, shared stolen glances during the festivals, and yet the rumors had always followed them. He was distant, proud, and impossible to approach. Now standing before him, her heart a fragile bird, Lyra felt the weight of every whispered insult she had endured in the past year. The court was silent, waiting. Every breath felt heavy, every second stretched into eternity. "Lyra," Kalen's voice rang out, deep and clear. "Step forward." Lyra's knees shook, but she obeyed. She moved slowly, feeling every eye upon her. Her hands brushed the hem of her gown, soft silk dyed in shades of midnight and silver, reflecting the faint glow of the enchanted lamps. She kept her gaze on him, willing herself to smile, to show him the courage that flickered inside her like a candle. When she reached the center, Kalen's eyes studied her, narrowing as if seeing her for the first time. For a moment, hope surged. Perhaps he would see her as she had always hoped, the quiet strength, the hidden fire, the magic within her blood. But then his lips curved into a smile that was anything but kind. "Defective," he said. The word fell like ice across her chest, freezing her heart in place. Lyra felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her, her breath caught in her throat. I, she stammered, unable to find words. "Do you not understand?" Kalen continued, his voice cold and certain. "The moon goddess chooses only the perfect. And you are not what you were meant to be. You are defective." A murmur rose among the court. Some hid shock behind polite gasps, others whispered cruelly. Lyra's cheeks burned with shame. Her mind spun. Was she truly defective? Had she been wrong to hope? She wanted to run, to escape the hall, the court, even the eyes that watched her humiliation. She wanted to disappear into the gardens, where no one would see her trembling, where no one would hear the cruel word that seemed to echo in her mind over and over: defective. But instead she bowed her head. She did not cry, not yet. She turned and fled, her skirts brushing against the marble as she ran. Outside, the world was quiet, the sun still high, but the forest beyond the palace walls seemed to call her. She ran through the gates, past the stone courtyards and the fountain that glittered with enchanted waters, and into the shadowed forest where the trees whispered secrets older than the kingdom itself. Lyra stumbled into a small clearing, her chest heaving. She sank to the ground, burying her face in her hands. Tears spilled, hot and bitter. She had always believed in destiny, in the moon goddess who watched over the kingdom, who whispered truths to those who sought them. But if the goddess had chosen Kalen, if he had rejected her, had she been wrong to hope? The forest around her was quiet at first, the gentle rustle of leaves like a soft lullaby. Then something strange happened. The air shifted, cool and gentle, carrying a soft silver light that bathed the clearing in an otherworldly glow. Lyra lifted her head, her tear-streaked face reflecting the moonlight, though it was not yet night. A voice, soft and melodic, echoed in her mind. Lyra, child of the silver moon, do not weep. You are not what they say you are. You are not defective. Lyra froze. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked around, but no one was there. Only the forest, the moonlight, and the whispering trees. Who are you? She asked aloud, her voice trembling. I am the moon goddess, the voice replied, like wind brushing across the water. I have watched over you since the moment you were born. Your power sleeps, hidden, waiting for the day you will claim it. Do not let the words of men define you, for destiny cannot be broken by cruelty. Lyra's tears fell again, but this time they were not only of sorrow. They were tears of wonder, of hope, of something she had never dared to imagine, a future where she could be more than what others said she was. But I am weak, she whispered. I am small. I cannot even touch my fated mate's heart. How can I be anything more? Strength is not measured by what the world sees, the goddess said. It is measured by what you carry in your heart. You are destined for greatness, Lyra, and your fated mate, he will learn in time the truth of your light. But first, you must discover it for yourself. Lyra shivered as a gentle wind wrapped around her, lifting her hair and gown like the arms of a comforting friend. She felt warmth, a pulse of power beneath her skin, subtle but undeniable. Her heart beat faster, and with it, a spark of courage she had never felt before. I will try, she whispered, almost to herself. I will become someone worthy of destiny. The moonlight shimmered brighter, and a small, delicate creature emerged from the shadows, a silver fox with eyes like molten gold. It circled her feet, tilting its head as if assessing her. Then it nuzzled her hand, and Lyra felt a strange energy flow through her, connecting her to the forest, to the light, to the very pulse of the kingdom itself. You are not alone, Lyra, the goddess whispered one last time. Even the rejected can shape destiny. Remember this and do not forget who you are. The fox disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, and the silver light faded. Lyra remained in the clearing, her hands glowing faintly with a soft warmth, her heart no longer heavy with despair. She was small, yes. Frightened, yes. But she was no longer entirely powerless. She had been given a gift, a chance to grow, to learn, to transform. When she finally returned to the palace at dusk, the sky painted in shades of violet and gold, she did not seek Kalen. She did not crave his approval. Instead, she gazed at the horizon, imagining the day she would rise, not as the girl he called defective, but as someone luminous, someone feared, someone revered. At night, when the moon hung full and silver above the palace, she whispered a promise to herself. I will not be what they think I am. I will be what I was meant to be, and one day he will see. But even as she made this vow, Lyra could not ignore the ache in her chest, the sting of rejection that still lingered. The memory of Kaelin's cold words haunted her, sharp as the edge of a blade. And somewhere deep within, a quiet, trembling hope stirred, a hope that one day their fates would intertwine again, under different stars in a different destiny. The wind carried the faintest whisper of the moon goddess across her face, like a silver thread connecting her to the heavens. Your journey begins now, Lyra. Walk boldly, for the world will remember your light. And in that moment, Lyra understood. Her life had changed forever. She had been rejected, yes, humiliated, yes. But she had also been chosen, not by men, not by the court, but by the moon goddess herself. And the fire within her chest flared to life, bright and unstoppable. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous even. The whispers of the court, the jealous eyes of her peers, the shadow of Kaelin's pride, all would challenge her. But Lyra knew one truth above all. Destiny, once awakened, could not be ignored. And hers was calling her, luminous and fierce, into a world she had only just begun to understand. As the night settled over the palace and the first stars began to glimmer, Lyra walked through the quiet corridors, her steps firm. The forest awaited, the moon goddess's lessons awaited, and somewhere in the distance, Kaelin would soon feel the stirrings of a destiny he had dismissed too soon. And so, the rejected girl began her journey, alone, yet not lonely, small, yet powerful, heartbroken, yet hopeful. The kingdom slept, unaware that a storm of light, magic, and fate was already rising, and it would change everything. Lyra spent the following weeks far from the palace, hidden in the quiet embrace of the forest. Each day she trained herself, guided by the soft whispers of the moon goddess in her dreams. At first it was small things, her heartbeat slowing in the moonlight, the wind bending slightly when she wished it, the glow of silver at her fingertips that vanished when she tried to hold it too tightly. The forest had become her teacher. Ancient trees with bark like stone and leaves that shimmered under the moonlight watched over her. Birds of unusual colors chirped strange songs at her presence. Even the smallest creatures, tiny deer and luminous insects, seemed to sense her growing power. Lyra realized that her connection to the world was changing. She could feel the pulse of life around her, and with it, a gentle but undeniable magic stirring in her veins. During the days, she practiced control. She could make flowers bloom with a touch, summon gentle streams of silver light along her hands, and even hear the soft murmur of the forest, as if it whispered secrets of the ancient world. Each night, she dreamed of the moon goddess, her voice soft yet commanding. "Lyra," the goddess whispered in her sleep, "your power is tied to the fate of many. You are not only for yourself. The kingdom watches, though it does not yet know. Your fated mate, he will come, and he will see what he denied." Lyra woke from the dreams with a mixture of fear and excitement. Kalen. Even now his name brought a rush of memory, the coldness of his rejection, the ache of his words, the way her heart had twisted when he called her defective. And yet there was no bitterness in her. Only determination. She would grow. She would not be a girl who waited. She would be a force of her own, and if Kalen returned, he would see her as she truly was. Weeks turned into months. Lyra's body grew stronger, but it was her mind and spirit that changed most. She learned to listen to the whispers of the moon goddess and to trust her instincts. She discovered she could heal small wounds, calm frightened animals, and even sense when danger approached. It was subtle at first, then more pronounced. She felt a warmth inside, a fire that grew brighter with each act of courage and each small victory. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains and the sky turned a deep violet, Lyra sat by a small lake in the forest. The water reflected the first silver of the moon, and she lifted her hands above its surface. Slowly, silver light coiled around her fingers and stretched across the water like a bridge of moonlight. She gasped in awe. I can do this," she whispered. Her reflection in the water shimmered. She looked not at a small, fragile girl, but at someone radiant and strong, someone the moon goddess had called for greatness. Just then, a rustling came from the trees. Lyra froze. The forest had been her sanctuary, but now it seemed to stir with awareness. Shadows moved, though not threateningly. Out stepped a silver fox, its fur brighter than any she had seen before, eyes glowing gold. "You've grown," the fox said, its voice echoing in her mind as clearly as if it were spoken aloud. Lyra jumped back, astonished. You can speak." "Yes," said the fox. "I am the guardian of the forest, sent by the moon goddess. She watches your growth, Lyra. You are ready to see what lies beyond the trees, beyond the forest. But beware, for power draws attention." Lyra's heart pounded. She had felt it before, the whispers, the strange pull of destiny, but hearing it spoken aloud made the truth undeniable. She was no longer just a girl hiding from her rejection. She was becoming someone extraordinary. "Attention from whom?" she asked, her voice trembling. "From those who fear what they do not understand," the fox said. "And from the one who rejected you, he will come. His heart will stir, and he will see that destiny cannot be denied." Lyra's stomach tightened. Kalen. She tried to suppress the rush of emotions, the memories of his cold, proud face, but she could not yet. I don't know if I am ready," she admitted. "What if I fail?" The fox stepped closer, its golden eyes warm and wise. Failure is only the shadow of hesitation. You are ready, Lyra. Trust the moon, trust yourself. You have the power and you have the courage. That is more than enough. That night, as the forest slumbered and the moon rose high, Lyra dreamed once more. The moon goddess appeared, radiant and ethereal, her silver robes flowing like liquid light. Lyra, the goddess said, her voice like the calm of the sea, there is a darkness stirring in the kingdom, one that threatens not only the throne but the balance of fate itself. Your fated mate will be drawn to you, as will many who seek to claim power. You must learn to harness your strength, to bend fate without breaking it, and to forgive what must be forgiven. Lyra listened, awe and fear intertwined in her chest. "Forgive him," she whispered. "After what he said, after he—" "Even the proudest heart can be guided," the goddess interrupted softly. "Your rejection was not the end. It was the beginning. You must rise before he can see the truth and before the darkness can consume all." When Lyra awoke, the forest was bathed in the soft silver glow of dawn. She felt different, lighter yet stronger, determined yet calm. The fire inside her had become steady, no longer a flicker but a constant warmth that pulsed through her veins. Days passed, and word of a miraculous girl began to spread quietly among travelers and villagers near the forest. Stories told of a maiden who could heal, who could speak to animals, who glowed with moonlight at night. Lyra did not seek attention. She only sought to understand herself and her powers. Yet the whispers reached the palace, and Kalen, the prince who had rejected her, began to hear them. At first, he dismissed them. A child's tale, he told himself. But the visions began, flickers in his mind of a glowing girl, her eyes full of fire and quiet defiance. He could not explain why his chest ached when he saw her face in these visions, nor why he felt a pull toward the forest that he could not resist. One afternoon, Kalen found himself riding along the forest's edge. He did not intend to see her. He only wanted air, a moment of escape from the palace, from the pressure of expectation, from the growing tension in the court. Yet as he rode deeper, a silver light caught his eye, a soft glow between the trees, moving like moonlight on water. His heart stopped. He dismounted and walked cautiously toward the glow. There in the clearing stood Lyra. Her hair shimmered silver in the light, her eyes wide and luminous, and around her hands the soft glow of moonlight spiraled like living silk. She looked smaller than him, yet there was no weakness in her. She stood tall, a quiet confidence radiating from her. Kalen felt something stir in him, a mix of awe, fear, and regret. "You," he began, but no words came out. Lyra did not speak first. She only looked at him, her gaze steady, calm, and yet piercing. For a moment, Kalen remembered the girl he had dismissed at the rite of alignment, the one he had called defective, the one who had fled in tears. And now, standing before him, radiant and unafraid, she was not defective. She was extraordinary. "You've changed," he said finally, his voice low, unsure. "I did not expect." Lyra held up her hands and the glow faded. "I am still me," she said quietly. "But I have learned who I am meant to be, and I will not be the girl you rejected. I will be who I was always meant to be." Kalen swallowed hard. His pride, his arrogance, all seemed to falter in her presence. He wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain, but no words came that could capture the weight of his own feelings. He could only watch as the girl he had dismissed, as weak now, seemed more powerful than anyone he knew. The forest was silent except for the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of energy that Lyra seemed to draw around her. Kalen realized with a sudden, uneasy clarity that this was only the beginning. He had seen a glimpse of her power, of her strength, and it both terrified and captivated him. Lyra took a step back, her gaze never leaving his. "I have work to do," she said softly. "The moon goddess has shown me a path. I cannot waste time waiting for anyone else to understand." Kalen nodded, unable to speak. He felt a stirring in his chest, a mixture of longing, fear, and the first true spark of respect. He wanted to follow her, to speak, to explain, yet he knew she was already moving beyond him. She had begun a journey he could not yet join. And as Lyra disappeared deeper into the forest, bathed in silver light, Kalen remained at the edge, realizing that the girl he had rejected was no longer the one who could be ignored. The moon goddess's whisper returned in his mind, soft and knowing. Destiny is never denied. Watch and learn, for the one you dismissed is already shaping fate. And in the forest, Lyra walked on, the glow of the moon surrounding her, the spark of power growing brighter with every step. She had awakened. She had survived rejection. She had begun the path to her true destiny. And the prince who once called her defective was only the first of many who would come to see her light. The kingdom slept unaware that a girl, once rejected, was now becoming the force that could change everything. The kingdom was changing, though most of its people did not yet notice. Shadows lingered at the edges of the streets, whispering of old curses and forgotten magic. The court murmured about strange happenings in the forests, about a girl glowing with moonlight, healing the wounded, and commanding respect from animals and travelers alike. No one could explain her, but everyone whispered of her power. Kalen rode through the palace gardens, his horse's hooves echoing on the cobblestones. He could not stop thinking of her, Lyra, the girl he had rejected. Her image haunted his mind. Silver hair catching the moonlight, her hands glowing softly, the calm fire in her eyes. He could not understand why he was drawn to her, why the memory of rejection now felt like a mistake he could never undo. The prince had always been proud, confident in his power, certain of his choices. But now he felt something unfamiliar, uncertainty. He had dismissed Lyra as weak, unworthy, defective. And yet the whispers of the moon goddess, the visions that came to him in his dreams, told a different story. "She has grown," Kalen muttered to himself, his voice low. "Stronger than I imagined, stronger than anyone could have expected." Even as he spoke, he knew he had to see her, not as a prince seeking to control, but as a man trying to understand what he had lost, what he had underestimated. Meanwhile, Lyra had been preparing. She had spent months in the forest, learning to control her powers, listening to the moon goddess's guidance, and feeling her confidence grow. She knew that Kalen would come. She felt it in her bones, in the pull of fate that connected them despite the rejection, despite the past. And she had made a choice. She would not run from him again. She would face him, not as a frightened girl, but as someone strong and capable of shaping her own destiny. The clearing where they met was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Lyra stood in the center, her gown of silver and midnight flowing around her, hands glowing faintly with the light of her magic. The forest around her seemed alive, leaves rustling with whispers of encouragement, the wind circling her in protective patterns. Kalen stepped into the clearing, dismounting his horse. His eyes widened as he saw her. She was not the same girl who had fled from him months ago. She was luminous, commanding, and yet calm. The power she carried was visible in the way the moonlight bent around her, in the quiet authority in her stance. "Lyra," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He took a cautious step forward. I need to speak with you." Lyra's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "Kalen," she replied softly, "you speak, but do you understand what words can do? Do you understand what rejection can leave behind?" Kalen swallowed, suddenly aware of the weight of his own past arrogance. I was wrong," he admitted. "I did not know, I could not see what I was missing." Lyra's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained fierce. "It is not enough to say that," she said. "You cannot undo what you did, you cannot take back your words. You can only move forward if you are willing to learn, to change, and to accept the consequences of your choices." Kalen nodded slowly. He had always been strong, but in her presence he felt vulnerable, exposed in a way he had never known. He had dismissed her, underestimated her, and now he realized that she was more than he could have imagined. "I want to understand," he said finally. "I want to help. If there is danger, if the kingdom is threatened, I need to be there with you." Lyra studied him for a long moment, weighing his words. She could sense the truth in him, but she also knew that words alone were not enough. Actions mattered. "Very well," she said at last. "But know this, Kaelin, I am not the same girl you once rejected. I have grown, and I will not be controlled. If you wish to help, you must stand as an equal, not as a prince seeking to command." Kaelin bowed his head, a gesture of respect he had rarely shown. "I understand," he said. No sooner had they agreed than the air shifted. A chill ran through the clearing, and the trees seemed to tense as though sensing a threat. Lyra's hands began to glow brighter, and Kaelin instinctively reached for his sword. From the shadows, a dark figure emerged, cloaked in swirling black mist. Its eyes glowed red, and its presence radiated malice. It was the curse the moon goddess had warned about, the ancient darkness that had slept in the kingdom for centuries, now awakened by the stirrings of destiny. Lyra stepped forward, her body trembling slightly but her voice strong. "Leave this place. You will harm no one." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like dry leaves in a storm. "You little girl cannot stop me. Your light is small. You are powerless." Lyra's chest tightened, but she did not falter. She lifted her hands, and streams of silver light shot out, striking the darkness. The figure hissed, recoiling. Kaelin charged forward, swinging his sword, but the darkness moved as if alive, avoiding him effortlessly. "You must fight, Lyra," Kaelin shouted. "Together," Lyra nodded. She felt the moon goddess's presence within her, guiding her. She focused, and her power surged, stronger than ever before. The light around her expanded, wrapping the dark figure in silver and gold, binding it with energy that pulsed like the heartbeat of the moon. The curse roared, thrashing violently. Kaelin fought alongside her, striking with his sword, but it was Lyra's magic that held the darkness at bay. Sweat ran down her face, her muscles ached, but she refused to yield. She could feel her destiny calling her forward, and she knew that if she failed, the kingdom would fall. And then, in a sudden, terrifying moment, the dark figure lunged directly at Kaelin. Time seemed to slow as Lyra's heart froze. The prince fell, caught in the shadow's grasp, and she saw the fear in his eyes, a fear she had never seen before. "No!" she cried, her voice breaking through the roar of the battle. She surged forward, drawing on every ounce of power she had learned to control. Silver light wrapped around Kaelin, pulling him free just as the darkness recoiled. Kaelin fell to the ground, breathing heavily, looking up at her with a mixture of awe and gratitude. You saved me," he said, voice trembling. Lyra helped him to his feet. Her hands still glowed faintly, her chest heaving from the effort. "I warned you," she said softly. "I am not the girl you rejected. I am stronger, and I will protect those who cannot protect themselves." Kaelin nodded, understanding finally dawning on him. He had underestimated her, dismissed her, and now he realized that she was more than a fated mate, she was a force that could shape destiny itself. But even as the dark figure retreated into the shadows, its presence lingered. Lyra knew it was not gone forever. The kingdom was still in danger, and the challenge had only just begun. As they stood together in the clearing, Kaelin looked at her with a new respect, a quiet humility that he had never shown before. I will follow your lead," he said. "Teach me. Help me understand." Lyra's gaze softened slightly. "Then you must listen, not with your pride but with your heart. Only then can we face what is coming." The moon rose high above the forest, casting its silver light on the two of them. Lyra felt a surge of hope and determination. She had faced rejection, embraced her power, and now stood ready to confront not only the darkness threatening the kingdom, but the complicated emotions tied to her fated mate. Kaelin, standing beside her, felt a stirring in his chest, a mixture of admiration, fear, and longing. He knew that the girl he had once dismissed was no longer someone to be overlooked. She was his equal, a force of destiny, and perhaps the only one who could save them all. But even as they prepared for what lay ahead, Lyra felt the moon goddess's whisper within her once more. The path is not easy, Lyra. Choices will come that will test your courage and your heart. Stand firm, for only through light and wisdom can darkness be overcome. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the glow of her magic pulse through her veins. She knew that the next challenge would be even greater, and the fate of the kingdom rested upon her shoulders. She was ready. She would not falter. And Kalen, for all his pride and mistakes, would learn that strength was more than power. It was heart, courage, and the ability to rise after being broken. The forest grew quiet once more, the moonlight wrapping them in a gentle silver glow. Lyra and Kalen stood together, united by circumstance, bound by destiny, and aware that the greatest trial was yet to come. And as the night deepened, the dark figure lingered at the edge of the trees, watching, waiting, and promising that the battle for the kingdom, and for their hearts, was far from over. Lyra tightened her hands into fists, silver light glowing faintly. "We will face it," she said quietly, more to herself than to Kalen. "Together we will face it, and nothing, no shadow, no fear, no rejection will stop me." Kalen looked at her, words failing him. He understood, finally, the magnitude of the girl he had once called defective. And deep within, he knew that the journey ahead would test them both, heart, mind, and soul. But it was a journey they would have to face. The night was silent except for the soft rustle of leaves, the distant howl of a wolf, and the quiet hum of Lyra's growing power. The kingdom slept, unaware that its fate now rested in the hands of a girl who had been rejected, but who had risen stronger than anyone could imagine. And the moon goddess watched, silently smiling as destiny unfolded. The night was alive with tension. The dark figure that had stalked the kingdom for centuries had grown stronger, feeding on fear, doubt, and the lingering whispers of rejected hopes. Lyra stood at the edge of the forest, her hands glowing with silver light, the moon goddess's power flowing through her like a river of stars. Kalen stood beside her, his sword in hand, though he now understood that it was her magic that would guide them, not mere steel. The clearing before them was shrouded in shadow. The darkness swirled like a living thing, twisting and coiling, as if testing their courage. Lyra's heart beat steadily. She no longer felt fear in the way she once had. Fear had become fuel, pushing her forward, reminding her of the girl she had once been, the girl called Defective, and the woman she had become. "We cannot fail," Lyra said softly, her voice steady. "This darkness is more than just a threat to the kingdom. It is a test of who we are, of who I am." Kalen nodded. "I understand now," he said. "I see the strength I once overlooked. I am here to support you, not to command. Teach me what I must do." Lyra's gaze softened, though her hands remained firm and glowing. "Then stay close," she said. "Follow my lead. The moon goddess will guide us both, but we must act as one." The dark figure let out a low, echoing growl. Shadows stretched forward like fingers, trying to touch, to suffocate, to consume. Lyra stepped forward, her hands lifting, and streams of silver light shot out, striking the darkness. The figure hissed and recoiled, but it did not fall. Its red eyes glowed brighter, reflecting malice and ancient fury. Kalen lunged, swinging his sword, and though he struck true, the dark figure seemed to absorb the blows, growing stronger with each attempt. Lyra realized the truth. Brute force alone could not defeat it. She needed to use her power, her connection to the moon, and the courage she had nurtured over months of training and solitude. "Focus on the light inside you," the moon goddess whispered in her mind. "It is not the moon alone that gives you strength, but the courage and love you carry." Lyra inhaled deeply, closing her eyes for a moment. She thought of everything she had endured: rejection, humiliation, self-doubt, and the long nights in the forest where she had learned to trust herself. She thought of Kalen, not as a prince, not as a fated mate, but as someone who had made mistakes and now stood willing to fight alongside her. And she thought of the kingdom, of all who depended on her courage, even if they did not know it. Opening her eyes, Lyra raised her hands high. Silver light poured from her fingers, spreading like waves across the clearing, bending the darkness back, forcing it to recoil. She could feel the pulse of her power growing stronger, each heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the moon above. "Now, Kaelin," she shouted, "strike while it is weakened." Kaelin moved with precision, guided by her magic. Together, sword and light, they formed a force that the darkness could not withstand. The figure shrieked, a sound that echoed through the forest like thunder, and surged forward one last time. Lyra stepped into its path, her silver light expanding, forming a barrier around them both. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. The darkness swirled around them, almost alive, trying to test her resolve. Lyra felt a sharp sting of fear, but it was fleeting. She reminded herself of every lesson learned in the forest, every moment of struggle and growth. She focused on her heart, on the courage she had nurtured, and the bond she now shared with Kaelin. Then, with a final, piercing cry, Lyra directed all her energy into a single beam of silver light. The darkness screamed, twisting and writhing as the light enveloped it, purifying it, unbinding the ancient curse. Slowly the shadows dissipated, fading like mist under the morning sun. The forest was quiet once more. The threat was gone. Kaelin sank to his knees, breathing heavily. You did it," he said, awe in his voice. I could never have imagined." Lyra knelt beside him, gently placing her hands on his shoulders. "We did it," she said. "Together. But remember this. The strength you saw tonight comes from more than magic or power. It comes from heart, courage, and the willingness to rise after being broken." Kaelin looked at her, his eyes shining with a mixture of respect, admiration, and something deeper. I understand now," he said quietly. "I was wrong to dismiss you. I never realized how strong you truly were." Lyra smiled faintly, the silver glow from her hands fading into the soft light of the moon. "It is not about proving yourself to others," she said softly. "It is about believing in yourself and trusting the path the moon goddess has given you." For the first time, Kaelin truly saw her, not as the girl he had rejected, not as someone to pity or control, but as an equal, radiant, and unyielding. And in that moment, he understood that redemption was not only for him but for both of them. They had both been shaped by mistakes, fear, and pride, but together they had forged something new. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, leaves rustling gently, the moonlight bathing them in silver. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet joy that had nothing to do with pride and everything to do with fulfillment. She had survived, she had grown, and she had embraced the destiny the moon goddess had promised her. Kaelin rose, looking at her with humility. "Lyra," he said, his voice firm but soft, "I cannot undo the past, but I vow to stand beside you now, as an equal, as a partner. I want to help carry this burden if you will let me." Lyra studied him for a moment. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the understanding that he had gained through trial and danger. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we move forward together," she said. "Not as master and servant, not as prince and subject, but as equals. We face the future side by side." Kaelin smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and awe in his expression. I am grateful," he said. The moon hung high above them, full and silver, casting a calm, peaceful light over the clearing. Lyra felt the moon goddess's presence around her, gentle and approving. "You have grown, Lyra. You have embraced your destiny. Remember always, your courage and your heart are your greatest power. The kingdom will remember your light." Lyra exhaled, a soft smile spreading across her face. "I will not forget," she whispered. "I will always walk in the light I have earned, and I will protect what is dear to me." Kaelin reached out and took her hand, a gesture of trust and unity. "Then let us face whatever comes next," he said, "together." The forest seemed to glow in response, soft silver light dancing across the trees, and even the stars above shimmered, as though acknowledging the bond that had been forged in fire and moonlight. Lyra and Kaelin stood side by side, ready to face the future, not as prince and rejected girl, but as equals bound by courage, destiny, and mutual respect. As they walked back toward the palace, the air felt lighter, freer. The dark figure had been defeated, but more importantly, the darkness that lingered in their hearts, the pride, the doubt, the fear of rejection, had been transformed into understanding, strength, and unity. Lyra had proven not only her power but the depth of her heart, and Kaelin had learned humility, patience, and the value of true partnership. The kingdom would awaken the next day, unaware of the events that had unfolded under the silver moon. Yet everything had changed. A girl once called Defective had become the savior of the realm. A prince who had dismissed her had learned the power of respect, empathy, and love earned through courage. And together, they would shape the destiny of the kingdom in ways no one could have imagined. Lyra looked up at the moon, feeling a quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying through the trees, "for showing me who I am and for guiding me to my path." The moon goddess's voice echoed softly, like a silver wind brushing through the leaves. "Your journey is only beginning, Lyra. Walk boldly, for your light will shine in even the darkest places. You have embraced destiny, and in doing so, you have become a beacon for others. Remember, strength comes from the heart and courage comes from rising when you are broken. You are never truly alone." Lyra turned to Kaelin, her hand still clasped in his. "We have come far," she said softly, "but this is only the start. There is much to learn, much to protect, and much to create, together." Kaelin nodded, feeling the truth of her words deep in his soul. "Together," he agreed, and for the first time he did not feel the need to lead or control. He only felt the need to stand beside her, to support her, to honor the strength and light he had once failed to see. The night stretched on, quiet and peaceful, the moon bathing them in silver light. The kingdom slept, the darkness defeated, and the forest whispered promises of growth, courage, and destiny fulfilled. Lyra had faced rejection, embraced her power, and proven that the true strength of a person is measured not by others' judgments, but by the courage of the heart. And Kaelin had learned that humility, respect, and partnership were the keys to true strength. Together they had transformed the fate of the kingdom, and themselves, in a night that would be remembered in legend for generations. The moon shone bright above, silver and eternal, a witness to their courage and the beginning of a new era. And as they looked toward the horizon, Lyra knew one thing for certain: no rejection, no darkness, and no fear could ever define her again. She had risen, she had embraced her destiny, and her light would never fade.